Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Art and Mind Village Chat. I'm Fred Johnson from the Straz Center for the Performing Arts. Really honored to be again with my co-host, Miss Susan Mag-Salmon, the Executive Director of the Art and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins University. This, of course, as we always remind you, is a collaboration between science and artists to really share the importance of art as a modality for health and well-being with quantifiable evidence from our science and arts community. This is such a fantastic opportunity to come together, and I'm so honored today to be here to be a part of this conversation about dance and its amazing pathway to health and well-being. So Susan, welcome and tell us, what is our experience today?
Well, thanks, Fred. It's really a pleasure to be with you again today. We are very lucky today to have the Mark Morris Dance Group join us through David Leventhal, who is the creator of Dance for PD at Mark Morris. And they have just done some very extraordinary work over the last years, thinking about how movement and dance can help with people who have Parkinson's. And we're really excited to be able to share this program today. It's amazing as we've done this series, when we think about what evidence means and what data the arts provide. And I think increasingly we're starting to understand that there are very generative, deep and rich ways to understand how these kinds of art experiences change us physically, change us emotionally, and I would say change us spiritually. And so I'm very excited to welcome David to share a bit more about the Dance for PD program and introduce us to some of the folks that you've been working with. So welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Fred. It is a great pleasure to be with you and to share this work with you. This is coming into our 20th year of the Dance for PD program, which will be next October. And this program really started when the Mark Morris Dance Group opened a new dance center in Brooklyn in 2001. We wanted this center to be more than just a rehearsal space for the company. We wanted it to be a school for all ages in Brooklyn and beyond. And we also wanted it to be a community center, a place where our community could come together and experience the joys and benefits of dance and music. And that vision that Mark and his executive director, Nancy Umanoff, had really has gone beyond the original intent, because really in the first few months, we were blessed with people from the community coming in and saying, we'd like to do this, or we'd like to do that. We envision this, and we listened, and we really tried to make sure that our programming responded to and would enrich the lives of our community members. One of the people who came through those doors was a woman named Oli Westheimer. And Oli was running the Brooklyn Parkinson group, which was a support group and is still a support group at the time. And she said, I would like my group to dance. I have a hunch that dance could be really helpful for people with Parkinson's. And Oli saw this as a double-edged sword. So she saw on the one hand that dance could be an escape from the challenges of Parkinson's, escape from rigidity, from balance challenges, and escape from just having to deal with symptoms all the time. But she also realized that dance was a very targeted, specific way that people with Parkinson's could address symptoms head on. So it was both an escape from that reality of medicalization, but also an opportunity to think like a dancer, to move like a dancer. And Oli believed that the skills and the training that dancers have and develop through the process of skill building, through rehearsal, and through performance would be exceptionally important for people living with Parkinson's. But at the time, we really had no research to back that up. It was, as I said, a hunch. And so we started classes with a small group at the Mark Morris Dance Center, about 6 people. And the program over the years has really grown from that initial cohort into a global program. We now have affiliates in more than 25 countries around the world. We train teachers from all over the world to use this model and use this approach to enable people living with Parkinson's in those communities to share, to learn from, to teach dance artists. And so these classes really, more than anything, are a way that dancers and people living with Parkinson's come together to exchange material, to understand each other's worlds, and to benefit from that experience. We are blessed now with quite a lot of research, more than 40 peer-reviewed studies on the impact of dance in Parkinson's. And I'm thrilled today to have with me two colleagues who have done really groundbreaking research in this area. So it's a pleasure to introduce Rachel Barr from Canada's National Ballet School and Dr. Joe D'Souza from York University.
Wonderful. Well, if we could, let's cut to the video that shows people how this works and share a little bit about the community. And then we can talk with Rachel and Joe and also Nancy, who is a dancer as part of the program.
The motivation for starting a dance class for people with Parkinson's came from the desire to help people remember who they are is still the most important component of their existence, not Parkinson's.
At first didn't want to do it because I thought I'd be associated with a lot of people on the stage of Parkinson's that I didn't want to be at, and that would be discouraging to me. But I finally went, and I've never regretted the decision that I made.
Medicines can't always do as much as we want. So I've been recommending people for years and years to take dance for PD.
I see transformation happen in front of my eyes. So people often come into the class with a lot of rigidity, and suddenly in that space, they come alive.
My hands are so stiff I can't straighten my hand out. You know, just start moving gently and all of that stiffness goes away.
There is something magical that takes place in there. I'm not sitting there thinking about my body. I'm just trying to move.
I hear from my patients when they come back how much it seems to support and sustain them emotionally.
I look to the rest of the group for inspiration. We are there for moral, spiritual, emotional support.
When I came in, I really didn't even have a chance to be skeptical because the group immediately embraces you.
It's a time when you connect, and you don't have to be embarrassed because everybody else has a problem too.
Gives people the courage to leave their apartments and go somewhere else and have a different kind of experience than they do when they're alone, which ends up being a lot of the time.
When someone shakes hands with someone who can hardly hold their hand up, they're honoring the humanness of the individual. The feeling I get from being in this group is a feeling that it's going to be hard to replace with any other activity. So I hope it lasts as long as I do.
No matter what stage you are or what your previous experience has been with exercise or movement, you belong here.
Come try it once, do a few moves, enjoy the music, enjoy the sense of community. You're going to want to come back.
So beautiful. Thank you, David, for sharing that. Nancy, you're a dancer, and I understand you've been dancing for a number of years. Could you talk with us about how you got started and how this has been for you?
I first found this program because I was bringing my granddaughter to Mark Morris for, she was 3 or 4, little dance lessons. And one day, and her class happened to be in the same classroom that the Dance for PD class was in. So when they're leaving, I was coming. And so I knew that it existed. Several years later, when I was diagnosed, however, by that time I'd forgotten that it existed. And I was reminded of it at the Y in the neighborhood. And I called them up thinking, oh no, I've never danced, what? But it sounded
What
like fun.
courage.
I was really looking for things that would help me out. I knew I had to be active and there needed to be that connection. So I decided to go and I went there, and I tell you that all of my symptoms disappeared once I started dancing. Between the music and the beat of the music and the other people around me, I forgot. And I started to move and I really didn't have any symptoms. And I started to just evolve, and the feeling didn't leave me when I left the dance class.
How often do you dance now?
Well, now that I'm dancing on Zoom, with all the Zoom classes, I don't have to worry about scheduling and getting somewhere. I attend at least 1 or 2 sessions every single day, and all different kinds of dance, from jazz and sort of Broadway dancing to ballet to tap to whatever happens to be coming along. I'm like, okay, I'm going there. And it's really been a really blessing in my life. And I try as many ways as I can to share it with others. And I see as new people come in, the same thing happens to them. There's just a transformative moment, and it's beautiful.
I love that. Earlier, you were sharing how it made all of the pieces come together. Can you talk a little bit about that? This idea of connecting the dots?
Sure. When you have Parkinson's, one of the symptoms that nobody really talks about is the lack of coordination inside your own brain and nervous system, and how everything feels like it's out of sync, you know. And you used to be able to walk and sing to the music. You'd think, how bad can that be? You cannot do that. You can hear it, you know what your body's supposed to do, but you cannot do it. And when you dance, all of that comes together over time. The synapses start firing in the same time frame. You start feeling a connection between all the different parts of your body. Your hands and your feet are connecting with each other. You're moving in a way that's, you've got balance, you've got shape, you've got purpose, you've got intent, and you're not all over the place, which we spend most of our time being really kind of, it doesn't read maybe because it's going on inside, but inside everyone's all jumbled up. And this unjumbles us for sure. And most of the people in this program have been in it for a very long time. I mean, once they start coming, sorry, David, but you're not going to get rid of them. They're here for life.
We love that aspect of the program. And we love that over time, people often ask me, do you see benefits? Do you see improvements? What happens to people? And I talk about the fact that, yes, I do see change over time. I see improvements in those various components that you talk about, Nancy. But I think what is most heartwarming for me is that people become better dancers. They become more engaged artists. They become dancers. That is really one of the goals of our program, is that people see a path away from thinking of themselves as a patient, as someone with Parkinson's, and instead embraces the identity of a dancer, an artist, a creative person, a member of an artistic community. Though that identity shift is really a critical component of what we want. And it's wonderful to hear you talking about that. So one of the benefits of having people stay with the program a long time is that experience just gets richer and deeper. And Nancy, you mentioned earlier about feeling whole. I think there's that individual sense of feeling whole in your own body, but also that sense of feeling whole in a community sense, that we are part of a vibrant, artistic, dance-based community. And I love that aspect of the work.
Yeah, the fact that it becomes less about treatment and therapy and more about a way to live. Like Nancy, as you're speaking about it, I feel like it's just something you do. It's not, and dancing is as much a part of you as any other activity that you would do. And it's not that you are, using dance for therapy, but you are dance. And I love that. I love that you're an artist. Joe, I'd love to hear from you about what's going on inside of the brain with a Parkinson's patient, and why do we think dance and movement is really helpful?
That's a great question. If I knew this question, the answer to it, then potentially we could fix it, right? And so I think the issue is that we don't know what it is. And it's a disease where you have the desynchronization of all the timing you want to do with your whole body. And then you have a large wave of uncertainty because everyone takes, the people take medication, and the medication has to be taken every 4 or 5 hours based on how bad your disease is. So it's an oscillating disease that we have problems with understanding, and Nancy can address this, how this crazy wave I've seen in my friends that I dance with for the last 8 or 9 years, that you don't know what it's going to be like in the day. And this uncertainty makes the clinicians and the researchers like me try to study it even more difficult. That's why it's a puzzle. I love that we're playing around with trying to understand how the brain works in terms of the input and output. And if we understand that, then it is a hint to give to the clinicians when we understand the neural network of how to fix some of the timing issues. Mm-hmm. And that's where our work and Rachel's work has been since we started collaborating like 10 years ago or so. I'm trying to understand how the sound and the vision and all the touch signals that they use in dance, how that fixes the timing during dance. But then it lasts for a little bit of time after, but maybe after the medication wears off or overnight, it gets reset. And so you need this.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Joe.
Please add.
It's Nancy.
Yeah.
There's a click that happens. You're moving and you're not synchronized, and you're not synchronized, and then there's a click and you are, like that internal click. But this is something you can pull up for. You don't have to be in a dance class for this to happen. If you get frozen walking on with your walker down the street, you just start singing a marching song, will the saints go marching in? And all of a sudden, you can get out of that frozen position right away. I do it as a joke sometimes for people. I sneak up behind them, people in the class, obviously, who I have permission to tease. And I'll just start singing to them, and they immediately they snap out of it and they can move again. So there's a real technical something that happens that gets stimulated somewhere.
And it's multiple pathways, right? It's, as you mentioned, vision, sound, motor systems. Rachel, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I know that you brought this to Canada's National Ballet School quite a while ago. Could you talk a bit about why you thought this was important and how you've been studying this over the last several years?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started as a research project with Joe, but really it came from my experience as a dancer. So my first passion was dance. I trained in dance professionally, and then when I went into academia and started to get into research, I really was curious about the very unique experience of dancers. So specifically in terms of not just how they learned movement, but how they experienced it. So that complex movement sequence were like habits. You heard the music. I can remember saying to Joe, like, if I hear, I did years of corps de ballet. So if I hear Act 2 Swan Lake, like I'm never going to forget that scene, and it's going to, it's in my body. And I think, going to Joe and Nancy's point before, I was really curious to see if people living with Parkinson's can essentially think or perform like dancers. Like how will that affect their experience of Parkinson's? And so really the shift towards studying dance in people with Parkinson's came from initially studying brain activity of professional dancers learning new choreography. And then we wanted to see if we mimic that in people living with Parkinson's, how that was experienced by them. So I was just doing a little bit of research online, discovered that there was this program coming out of Brooklyn, was getting rave reviews, and sent an email off to Dave to see if I could bring him up to Toronto. And of course he did. And so we started studying a group there. And we thought it was just going to be a 12-week project at the school, which in addition to training, professional ballet school students, is really committed to kind of similar to the Mark Morris Dance Group, to really engaging with our community through dance. And so we started with the research project, but as David was saying, we discovered we were building a community. So a community within our community at the school. And at week 12, like there was no way we were going to stop, because it was a reciprocal relationship. So it's not just, it's very much about the person living with Parkinson's, of course, and the benefits and the experience for them, but also for our young students, for our colleagues, and for the community where we're located, even in the city. The addition of this dance program, it started to kind of like spread its roots and really become much more in lots of different ways. And it's sort of exciting and addictive. And so once you get started, you find yourself almost a decade on, and you're still waist deep in it.
It is amazing how many people have been drawn to the program, and how it's grown so dramatically all over the world. David, could you talk a little bit about, I know the program was quite strong prior to COVID-19, but can you also talk about sort of where the program has grown since COVID-19?
Sure. And I just want to pick up one thing that Rachel mentioned, and also that Nancy mentioned, this idea of the program making a dancer or an individual feel whole, feel connected. I think the same is true for organizations. I know that a lot of people watching this particular conversation may be managing a performing arts organization or involved in a dance company or theater. I think it's really important to see where this program has lived and taken root. It makes the organization whole. It brings the mission into focus. It helps connect the performance side, or the sort of quote unquote professional side of an organization, performance element, with the educational and community engagement aspects. Mm-hmm. So for example, Nancy, you've participated in performances. We've, and we put on, shows that have been danced by the Dance for PD participants, and those shows always engage some element of Mark Morris repertory, because that's where our home base is. And so there's this wonderful collaboration and partnership among all parts of the organization through the Dance for PD program, and I love that. And that's really continued through COVID, and in some ways, the program has expanded its reach and impact through the ability to offer all online classes. So before COVID, we had 9 or 10 locations in New York City where we offered weekly classes, and we would offer once a month a live stream that was one directional, so people could log in, but we couldn't see them. It was not interactive, and that was our basic programming. Since March, we've been offering anywhere between 7 and 12 live group classes on Zoom a week. And originally, we set up those classes for our New York participants, of which there are more than 1,000. And we assumed they would log in, but what we suddenly discovered is that people from all over the world started coming into those classes. And so we would be dancing with people from not only the West Coast or the South of the United States, but also South America and Europe and Japan and Australia and South Africa and India. And it was this global family that I knew of because I trained teachers all over the world, and I traveled to a lot of the communities where the classes take place. But we'd never had the opportunity to all dance together every week as one family. And that's been a remarkable silver lining of the pandemic. And I think what we've and I'm sure Rachel would say the same, that we can't go back. We have to acknowledge that having regular online access to this kind of program makes everybody stronger, makes everybody more connected, and has great benefits. So an example would be a participant who may have come once a week to Brooklyn, because that already was a lot to ask, to have to get dressed, to get your shoes on, to get out of the house. That already is a lot for some people living with Parkinson's. And then to deal with New York City transportation and traffic and the subway or however you're coming. And then finally you're in class for an hour, and there you are. And it's a wonderful experience. And then you have to turn around and do the whole thing again to go home. So people who came once a week and of course benefited from that are now coming every day. And so they're multiplying that benefit of social interaction, physical activity, creative stimulation, 3, 4, 5-fold over what was happening before. I want to acknowledge that there's some drawbacks as well. We can't use touch, right? It's harder to do some aspects of the class, but by and large, I think the experience has been tremendously positive.
David, it looked to me also like in the video, like that there were also caregivers that were involved as well, right? Which is such a beautiful thing. I mean, the video, such a great example of a real sense of family and how everyone was connected. But I saw that there were also caregivers. So there's that element too, right? Has that been a part of the experience?
That's such a great observation, Fred. It really has been part of our program and the NBS program from the beginning, in that partners and carers have always been part of the class. I think what's changed in the last 8 months is that it's now easier for everybody in that household to participate. So we sometimes have 2, 3, 4 family members coming in together. And something that's happened as well is we have people participating as family members in different continents, but they come to take class together. So we have like a mother and daughter. I think the daughter lives in Spain, the mother lives in Scotland, but they meet in our dance for PD class on Zoom. That's their chance, one of their chances to be together and to dance together when otherwise that would be impossible. So yeah, the care partner aspect is a very important component, and we realize that we are offering an opportunity for them as much as for our friends living with Parkinson's.
It's also interesting, a couple of observations. It's not a duality, right? You can be a performer and a community engagement person. You can be in person dancing and you can dance online. And that, I think we've been so mono-streamed for so many things, where we're looking at how messy the world is, but in fact, that gives us more opportunities to engage, and that you can dance with your friends and you can dance with your family. I also would be curious from Rachel and Joe, when I hear some of this, I think dosage and duration. And I think, well, what is the impact of dancing not once a week, but 7 times a week? And I think Nancy mentioned that, in fact, she's feeling even stronger by dancing more. Can you speak to that a little bit? And are you studying that?
I can say that. You want to start, or I'll go to Joe?
Go first.
I'll hand it over to you. So the experience of a dancer is literally to dance every day, right? Like when that the process of becoming a dancer is it becomes part of your regular practice. So for a professional dancer, they're not going to take an extended period of time off. Most days of the week, they're going to be in the studio and practicing. So if part of our understanding of the benefits of dance for people living with Parkinson's is that it is in some ways it's mimicking that all the different experience of the dancer, the rehearsal component, the physical component, all of that, then dosage would be really relevant, and it has broadly in the literature been considered to a certain extent, so looking at 1 class per week or 2 classes per week, for example. But certainly in the context of COVID, right, like it was pretty difficult to ask participants to come every single day, although it had been done a little bit, and study them. But with COVID and now this transition to more online experiences, it does open it up to even more possibility of understanding, well, what happens if this becomes a daily practice? Because my suspicion, because I know it, I've experienced, I know what it's like to dance once a week and then to dance every day. And once a week is a little bit frustrating, because you get to a certain place, but then next week you're starting back at that place in a way. Whereas that's why dancers train every day, so that there can be that progression. So I would really love to see if we could further explore that, now that there's just that much more access to dance.
Want me to say something as well? So what's cool is Rachel and I have been working on this for a long time, and we've been following our cohort of dancers since 2013, measuring their Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale, measuring their dosage of medication they take. And in a group of 16 people we've been following that long, their disease measured with the UPDRS slows down. So the progression is slowed down. So there's a manuscript we've submitted to Nature of Parkinson's Disease that is in the progress of getting published. And we had another student that Rachel knows, and maybe David met in a training, Deborah Rabinovich, who came from Argentina originally. She did a study that she's working on the reviews right now in our group. She looked at tango dancing every day for 2 weeks with people with Parkinson's, and it was only a small group of 8 people who went to the movement disorders clinic there every day. And they had improvements in the UPDRS, and in the questionnaires, they said they slept better. So what's interesting is we know that with Parkinson's disease, there's these precursors, these things that push them over the threshold to get the disease. One is sleep disturbances, one is depression, and one is anxiety. And if one of them or two or all three get better because they're dancing, maybe that helps the improvements of their disease to slow down. But this is all hypothesis now. We have these papers out, and we're still going to continue. You asked about what happens now. Like, all the people who we were measuring up until March are now not dancing in Toronto every day at the ballet school. So we can't measure their Parkinson's disease rating scale. We need to do that in person. So we've kind of converted now into questionnaires and doing stuff online. And we're sampling the whole world right now with questionnaires. I haven't emailed David yet or Rachel's for Toronto's data, but we're going to do this, and we're trying to get a sample of what's happening and a flavor, because I think the 2 or 3 important things that David, Nancy, and Rachel said is there's no touch, right? So when you are dancing with people, one of the important signals you get is touch. And then there's a couple that are even, I think, more important, but nobody thinks about, is olfaction, so smell. So people who have Parkinson's disease, they lose the sense of smell potentially before. And so, but when you're dancing together, you smell each other. You get a olfactory milieu that's so big compared to their home, right? And so the olfactory things, like if you walk into my kitchen here, there's food cooking, but you don't notice it after 5 minutes. It adapts. So if you're dancing with different people over the hour, moving through space, you're getting a hit of olfaction that is amazing. You may not even notice it. It might be unconscious because you're learning a dance, or you're really trying hard to not fall if you're a person with Parkinson's, or whatever, and your attention's not there, but it could be part of the thing. And there is olfactory therapy for people with Parkinson's. There's 2 papers in the world that I'm reading that are on my desk right here. And it's part of a treatment that we implicitly don't understand and don't systematically look at. And we can test now with COVID and a post-COVID. So this is what my hope is that we're doing. As I said, and as Susan said, the doses are different. Like the dance classes in Toronto that my mom and I dance with. So my mom's in Hamilton, I'm in Toronto, and we dance at 11 o'clock to 11:20. And then there's a dance class at NBS that just started up that's right now at 1:30 that I would normally be at. And so, but the time is different, right? There's all these things that may be hard to measure as a scientist to control for. But these are things that we're interested in. Rachel and I have this collaboration that we're going to probably have for the next like 30 or 40 years. So
That's amazing. It's also interesting when you talk about how in the live dance studio, it is so multisensory. It's vision, it's touch, it's smell, it's all of those sensory inputs and sort of how they fit together. Yet at the same time, this mirroring in a video in a two-dimensional world is still adding value as you expand the dosage that you're doing, the number of times that you're doing it. So it's really is fascinating. I think we have a clip that shows some of the virtual work. Let's play that for a moment.
Did you know how to dance before you started this program?
No, I never danced in my life.
During his brain scans, David visualized the dance he's learning while listening to music. We can see David's auditory cortex. This is where his brain interprets sound, in this case, music. It then translates sounds into signals that other parts of the brain use to move or react. David's motor areas link the music to his visualization of the dance. The activity in this area increased as he became more familiar with the choreography. For people with Parkinson's, the internal beat in their brain is desynchronized. So the music helps them recover some of the desynchrony their motor system needs. When they're moving to the music, they even sometimes forget they have Parkinson's. The insula is involved in emotions and in linking emotions and facial expressions to the music. And so what we see in some of our participants is the insula activity, as people learn, being a little bit more increased. And so I think this is part of the beauty about dance.
Beautiful, really beautiful. So we're about ready to run out of time. I would love to end this by going around and asking each of you, what are your hopes for the future when you think about dance and Parkinson's? Where would you like to see this go?
I think we are just at the beginning, really, of understanding the benefits, if you will, of dance for people with Parkinson's. But really, my hope, dance has been around throughout human history. Found in every culture around the world. So we know that it's adaptive. And this is really the case for why the arts are part of who we are. And so it is really important and really fascinating to understand how this is helping, but really understanding that dance is with us for a really important reason, and really helping to disseminate that message so that people in a really very simple activity, such as moving to music with fellow dancers, can make, yes, such a huge impact for the individual, for the community. And I think that's really the message that we hope to continue to tell with the research and with our efforts, so that we can really take advantage of this gift that our humanity has.
Mm-hmm. Joe, how about you? What's your hope for the future with this?
Yeah, so this is the best question. I hope that some of our work that Rachel and I are doing, and I hope it makes every single person who has a disease, and that doesn't have to be only Parkinson's. If we can prove to the medical doctors that the science shows that it actually changes their brain, and benefits their behavior and prolongs their disease in a disease that has no cure, it would make every single person dance, right? Despite, and that's what my kind of like lab's goals are with the people who do the work related to Parkinson's. And that's what motivates me, at least. So this is kind of my dream. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I hope. Yeah.
Well, I think the artists have always gotten there first, and the artists know that it works. I think, it's really, in some ways, science is just catching up, and they're coming fast, but they are catching up. Nancy, what would you like to see more of over the next couple of years with dance and Parkinson's? More classes?
Definitely more classes, and definitely not losing what we're learning about the larger global community as, as this pandemic comes to an end and we're back to quote unquote business as usual. I think we've learned an incredible amount. And I think in addition to the dancing and the music and the movement, we've also learned the value of community, because that is what has replaced the ability to touch and feel and smell that's missing in our experience now. If you have a 15-minute chat after every dance session, people have a chance to say and express how they felt. They can reach out to each other. They look forward to seeing that person from South Africa or Canada show up week after week, and you become friends with them, even though you'll probably never actually ever meet. But those relationships are there, and that's what enables the dance to hook in. See what I mean? You have to have a receptive, welcoming environment. Then all things can grow. And I don't know how Mark Morris figured it out, or the whole Mark Morris community, but they have a magical recipe.
Yeah. And David, maybe that's a good way for you to take us home.
Well, I maintain that access to arts experiences is a basic human right. Everybody in the world has the right and the desire to participate in engaged artistic communities and to be fully part of those communities. So from my perspective as a teaching artist and as a program administrator, the big words for me are access, inclusion, and belonging, to make sure that everybody living with Parkinson's, and as Joe said, really everybody in the world who is living and may have other challenges, has access to artistic experiences that can enrich them, give benefits, bring people together, regardless of where you're living, what your economic situation is, what your background is, what your language is. Everybody belongs in this kind of experience. We want to make sure from our perspective that experience, wherever it's happening, is an inclusive experience, that everybody there feels that they belong regardless of their level of ability or experience. And that's really what the arts can do, but we need to work really hard to make sure that those doors are open as wide as they can be. And that's what we're committed to over the next many years.
And what an incredible gift that you have brought to us just in this conversation and in the work that you all do. And, a deep thanks to Mark Morris for having the vision to expand beyond that general perception that many people have in the world that art or artists or dancers or musicians or singers are based upon someone's capacity to have a gift for performance. The beautiful thing that I felt here today is, by the example of your conversations, and Nancy, thank you so very much for your sharing with us an authentic experience of how dance makes you feel, is that, to be inspired together to move our bodies and to recognize that that's an integral part of community, and being able to share in a conversation that, oh, by the way, helps us to understand that this is what happens, to your brain, or this is what happens when your body moves, and all of these components work together because, it's another way of expressing and articulating the commonality of our humanity. And that's really what the arts is so very much about. David, thank you so much. Rachel, thank you. Joseph, Nancy, and as always, Susan, thank you so very,
Thank
very
you.
much. And again,
Very
thanks to
wonderful.
all of
Thank
you who, share with us one of your greatest commodities, and that's your time, as we really, really explore and expand our understanding of the art of living through the amazing experiences of creativity and through art. Again, I'm Fred Johnson. Susan, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. And until next time, be safe, stay strong, and dance.
And dance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.